We often use policing and law enforcement interchangeably, but they represent different approaches to maintaining order. Policing is reactive. It focuses on responding to disturbances and ensuring public safety in the moment. Think of it as keeping the peace. Law enforcement, on the other hand, is proactive. It seeks to prevent crime by enforcing laws, often through surveillance and investigation. This distinction, while subtle, has profound implications for how we address issues like drug use. Consider marijuana. In many places, its legal status is murky. Possession might be a misdemeanor or even decriminalized, yet still technically against the law. This is where the lines blur. A police officer, seeing someone smoking marijuana in their own home, might choose to ignore it. There's no immediate threat to public safety, no disturbance to address. Law enforcement, however, might see this as grounds for further action, potentially leading to surveillance or even a warrant. This difference stems from their respective goals. Policing, with its emphasis on immediate order, is less concerned with minor offenses that don't impact public peace. Law enforcement, however, sees any violation, however small, as a crack in the edifice of the law. Their job is to enforce, not to judge the severity on a case-by-case basis. This can lead to situations where individuals, though not actively harming anyone, are nonetheless subject to the scrutiny and potential consequences of law enforcement. It's crucial to understand that neither approach is inherently better. Both have their place in a functioning society. Policing provides immediate response and keeps the peace in our day-to-day lives. Law enforcement aims to prevent future crime and uphold the law, even when it's inconvenient or seemingly minor. The key is finding a balance, a way to ensure public safety without unnecessarily infringing on individual freedoms. And that balance, like the legal status of marijuana itself, is often a matter of ongoing debate. The tension between policing and law enforcement becomes even more apparent when we consider the home. Traditionally, the home has been afforded special status in our legal system. A man's home is his castle, as the saying goes. This is reflected in laws limiting police searches of private residences. Policing, with its focus on public order, generally respects this boundary. What happens in the privacy of one's home, as long as it doesn't spill out into the public sphere, is often seen as a private matter. Law enforcement, however, operates under a different set of assumptions. The home, while private, is not exempt from the law. If there's suspicion of illegal activity, even within the confines of a private residence, law enforcement agencies might employ surveillance tactics. This could involve monitoring internet activity, looking for suspicious purchases, or even conducting physical surveillance on a property. The rationale is that uncovering and preventing crime, even in private spaces, is essential to maintaining order. This difference in approach has real-world consequences. Consider again the example of marijuana use. A person consuming marijuana in their own home might be of little concern to a police officer focused on public disturbances. However, the digital footprint of buying marijuana online, or the scent of marijuana detected during a routine patrol, could be enough to trigger law enforcement scrutiny. What started as a private, victimless act within the supposed sanctity of the home could escalate into an investigation, potentially leading to searches, seizures, and even arrests. This is not to say that law enforcement always overreaches. There are legitimate reasons for investigating potential criminal activity, even within homes. The point is that the threshold for intervention is often lower for law enforcement than for policing. This difference in approach highlights the inherent tension between individual privacy and the pursuit of law and order. It's a balancing act with no easy answers, and the scales often tip depending on the perceived threat, the political climate, and the resources available to law enforcement agencies. Section 3: The Balancing Act, Safety, Freedom, and the Law. The dichotomy between policing and law enforcement isn't about right or wrong, but about finding a balance that ensures both public safety and individual liberty. Too much emphasis on policing, while allowing for greater personal freedom, might lead to a reactive system that only addresses problems once they become visible and potentially dangerous. Conversely, an overly aggressive law enforcement approach, while possibly effective in preventing some crime, risks eroding privacy and creating a climate of suspicion and fear. Think of it as a spectrum. On one end, we have a society where law enforcement operates with minimal oversight, constantly monitoring for any infraction, however minor. This might lead to a decrease in certain types of crime, but at the cost of privacy and personal autonomy. Citizens might feel constantly watched, afraid to speak their minds or engage in behavior that, while legal, could be misconstrued or used against them. On the other end of the spectrum, we have a society where law enforcement is almost entirely reactive, only intervening when there's a clear and present danger to public safety. This might foster a sense of freedom and individual responsibility, but could also lead to an increase in crime and a sense that the rule of law is weak or inconsistently applied. The challenge then is finding the right balance on this spectrum. It's a delicate act, one that requires constant reevaluation and adjustment. Factors like technological advancements, evolving social norms, and the perceived level of threat all play a role in determining where that balance point lies. For example, the rise of the internet and social media has created new avenues for both crime and surveillance, forcing us to rethink the boundaries of privacy in the digital age. Similarly, events like terrorist attacks or mass shootings often lead to calls for increased security and surveillance, potentially shifting the balance away from individual liberties and toward a more proactive law enforcement approach. Ultimately, the question of whether we prioritize policing or law enforcement is a societal one. It's a conversation that requires input from all stakeholders, from law enforcement professionals to legal scholars to ordinary citizens. Finding the right balance, one that ensures both safety and freedom, is an ongoing process, a constant negotiation between competing priorities.